So it's been a crazy day for Xbox, Activision, Blizzard, the acquisition. They are in Brussels. They are pleading their case to the EU as to why this deal should pass, why it isn't anti-competitive, and there's been just a ton of news surrounding it. And let's talk about it. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. I'm going to try to go over as much as I can in this video, so bear with me as I go through this news. So right now, the biggest announcement of all is that we saw it this morning with Xbox and Nintendo. They signed that deal for 10 years for Call of Duty, and they say Xbox games, whatever that means. That could have just been the wording of the tweet, but specifically it is for Call of Duty. And then later on, Brad Smith came out and announced that they are also making a 10-year deal with Nvidia GeForce Now, which is a cloud-based streaming service to bring over the Xbox Game Pass catalog immediately. So this is an article from Insider Gaming, and it says Microsoft has announced that it will be bringing Xbox PC games to Nvidia's GeForce Now streaming service. The announcement comes from Microsoft President Brad Smith, who, while giving a press briefing in Brussels, said that the company has reached a deal with Nvidia, and this deal will see the entire library of Xbox PC games become available on Nvidia GeForce Now. This includes games like Call of Duty, Diablo, and more. Should they acquire Activision Blizzard, should this deal go through, all of those games are going to be coming over to the service. And one of the big things that they said is that they are going to be bringing these games to an additional 150 million devices that are not there today, which I think it's something that really pushes home the point, or really pushes home the fact that Xbox isn't trying to close off their ecosystem. We already know that, but this right here pushes that forward to the regulators. They aren't trying to destroy a console. They aren't trying to foreclose the PlayStation console. What they're trying to do is get all of their games on as many platforms as possible, all while having all of the other competition within the industry, because they know the more people that can go out and play those games, the higher chance that they're going to buy into the Xbox ecosystem, which at the end of the day will make them more money. It is obviously about making as much money as possible, but it isn't about trying to kill off the PlayStation platform. And this was in addition to that 10-year deal that we got from the announcement this morning about Nintendo and Xbox. Now, on top of that, because of this deal, Nvidia now supports this deal, and Nvidia was one of the companies that was kind of against it. They are the ones that spoke out against with their concerns about how this is going to affect the streaming, how this is going to affect the subscription-based market, because obviously Nvidia GeForce Now is a main competitor for Xbox Game Pass, as it is cloud-based and it is streaming. They're going to be very concerned. If Xbox continues to grow and continues to be the best service out there, it's going to be harder for them to compete. Now we have Brad Smith saying this: it's really a question of whether the regulators want to block this deal or approve it with a set of guardrails, remedies, and solutions. And then the Nvidia Senior Vice President Jeff Fisher said, combining the incredibly rich catalog of Xbox first-party games with GeForce Now's high-performance streaming capabilities will propel cloud gaming into a mainstream offering that appeals to gamers at all levels of interest and experience. Through this partnership, more of the world's most popular titles will now be available from the cloud with just a click, playable by millions more gamers. And it's pretty big because Xbox already offers their first-party games on Steam. So now you're going to be able to combine the Steam players, the Steam database of players to buy their games on Steam and get access to the Nvidia GeForce Now stuff through the streaming service. So it will actually keep people within Nvidia's GeForce Now services within the Steam ecosystem, rather than thinking about wanting to go and sign up for Xbox Game Pass. But obviously, Microsoft is going to make money off of this deal. That's going to be the main thing why this does make sense for them, is they're going to make a decent amount of money by licensing out all of that stuff that they have with Xbox Game Pass over to Nvidia GeForce Now. But it's a sweet deal for Nvidia. I mean, it gets people to sign up for their GeForce Now subscription service. Their subscribers are going to grow, and they don't have to really worry as much about competing with Game Pass, because all that stuff is coming into their service. And I think Xbox would literally love to see the Game Pass catalog go everywhere. They put it on PlayStation, they would put it on Nintendo, they would revive Google Stadia and put it on Google Stadia if they could. That's the way I'm seeing it by them making these deals. This deal with Activision Blizzard for them is so important to go through. They will literally give Game Pass to anything that will accept it. And I think the biggest reason is because the reach, once Activision Blizzard stuff goes through, just completely expands. especially with the mobile side of things with King and Call of Duty Mobile and Diablo Immortal and any other mobile games out there from Activision Blizzard. Now, there was a big press conference at Brussels with Brad Smith, and we have the live updates here from GameIndustry.biz. So we'll go over some of the interesting things that Brad Smith said. So first of all, he announced that new deal like we just talked about that will bring Call of Duty and Xbox games that are on PC to Nvidia GeForce now, and they already have 25 million players on that service, so it's going to grow more most likely. And they say Microsoft will be bringing the Xbox games that play on PC to Nvidia's GeForce Now service. If the deal is approved, it will bring Activision Blizzard's games to GeForce Now too, including Call of Duty. And some of the organizations that are in support of this deal now include Nvidia and Valve, and that's huge. I mean, some of the biggest companies in gaming are all supporting this deal, except for Sony. Sony is the only one right now that is against this deal, and I think for regulators that is going to be pretty telling when you're seeing the competition that essentially is Xbox Game Pass and Microsoft's main competitors in Nvidia GeForce Now with the streaming stuff, saying we're okay with this deal now. I mean, they're getting a big thing from it, which is the Game Pass games, but they are supporting this deal. Now, Brad Smith says this: think about the market in Europe. It is a market where Sony has an 80% share. Globally, it is about 70-30. Japan, it is 96-4. These numbers have been remarkably steady for 2 decades. Even last year, when there were issues with Sony's supply chain, they came back strong. Sony outsold Microsoft by 69-31 towards the end of last year. And he's just highlighting the dominance of PlayStation, the dominance of Sony for the last 2 decades. And that's 100% true. No matter what platform you enjoy playing on, Sony has been extremely dominant since the PS2 era with the amount of consoles they have been selling. Even with the PS3, although that went off to a really slow, bad start, but at the end of the generation, I believe they did sell more than the 360. And it was overall, I think it made more money and stuff like that. The 360 had the red ring of death, and there was a lot of issues. I think the 360 was a better console, but at the end of that generation, PlayStation came back very strong, and then that continued over to the PS4, and it's really definitely continuing over to the PS5. They're extremely dominant within the console market, and these numbers are very telling, showing that they just don't want to lose that dominance. They don't even want to have to work to continue that dominance, which is why they don't want this deal to go through. It says here, Brad Smith again, regulators is not here to protect super dominant companies. Believe me, I know. And I mean, of course, Microsoft, $1 trillion company. They don't need to be protected. Let's not kid ourselves. Microsoft is extremely powerful, and this deal will make the Xbox division more powerful, significantly more powerful, but it will just create more competition, making Sony have to go out and do stuff like this in order to continue to grow. It will bring more value at the end of the day to all gamers. Now, when in terms of Sony not wanting this deal, he says, we haven't agreed a deal with Sony, but I hope we will. I hope today is a day that will advance our industry and regulation in a responsible way. So I think as things start to close in, as this deal gets closer to a decision having to be made, we'll see what these regulators are doing after this. I mean, this is a big day, but Sony may be looking at this and thinking that they're going to lose and this deal is going to go through. So they're going to want to sit down and hammer out a deal with Microsoft to at least get the best possible outcome that they can get, because they aren't actually 100% sure what the remedies the regulators are going to propose that will potentially be worse, unless for Sony, over them just sitting down with Microsoft and hammering out a deal. And they're saying here that Microsoft obviously wants to sit down, they want to hammer out a deal. And Brad Smith says, Sony says Call of Duty is a must-have product, but that must-have title was only available on 120 million devices. If the deal goes through, it will be available on 150 million more devices. So it's a big chunk of people that just weren't playing Call of Duty. You think about Nintendo and how well they've thrived and survived without having Call of Duty for a number of years. Now, next up, Brad Smith says that he's more optimistic about the deal going through because of the deals with Nvidia and Nintendo. And again, these are just on paper. These are just to really show these regulators that they aren't trying to kill the competition. They aren't trying to foreclose their competitors. What they're trying to do is just bring Xbox to more people, as many people as possible. They don't really care where Xbox is accessed, and whether that's console, whether that's cloud, your phone, all that type of stuff. Now, Activision Blizzard, they've been pretty pissed off at Sony, and they are accusing Sony for simply trying to protect its 2-decade dominance in video games. and that this deal will create greater opportunities for workers. Something we talked about in my video this morning about the unions writing their letters about how bad the working environment was at Activision Blizzard, how they definitely didn't want unions. They would bust up any talks about unions. Microsoft has signed that neutrality agreement, which will recognize unions that have been formed previous and will not stop employees from discussing and trying to form unions while within Microsoft. So that's a big thing for workers and a big thing for these organizations that support these workers. And that's why they're all for this deal going through, because at the end of the day, they believe this will be the better outcome for the people working with developing these games and within all of these different studios. Then he goes on here and he says, Smith is talking about multi-platform gaming and the fact that Call of Duty needs to run well on all consoles, including the Nintendo Switch. And I think that's something that will definitely be of a concern of the hardcore Call of Duty fans, because obviously the current Nintendo Switch is a weak console. I mean, it's much weaker than the current generation Xbox and PlayStation 5. So getting this game to run at the same level is impossible. They would have to make huge concessions for the game, and would that hurt the game coming out on the Xbox and on the PlayStation? But you got to think about this. Remember when Call of Duty was out on the Nintendo Wii, they essentially had a different version of the game, and the games on 360 and the PS3 were the better versions, and they weren't even really comparable. And I feel like going forward, if the Nintendo Switch doesn't release a Nintendo Switch 2 in a year from now, that's probably what they're going to do. You're going to have two different versions of Call of Duty. You're going to have a really dumbed down version, which was like the Nintendo Wii version, and then you're going to have the premium version. So I feel like on the current Nintendo Switch, they would think of bringing over a better optimized, like a little bit higher version of Call of Duty Mobile. I feel like that would be a smart move, because you're not going to get the current Call of Duty to run on the Nintendo Switch. Or the other option people are talking about is just running it through the cloud. Personally, I'd rather them just do both. You can get the option of both Call of Duties, but I feel like the native version with the less graphic fidelity would just be something they could easily do. Just dumb it down for the Nintendo Switch, the current one, and then if there's a Nintendo Switch 2, release the more premium one on that version of the console. But who knows? This is all just speculation and talking. Who knows what they will actually do when that time does come. Brad Smith says he has to believe the future is cross-platform, which is what this deal is all about. And that is the future. I mean, I've talked about this since the beginning of this generation. The days of console exclusivity are going away. PlayStation needs to adjust. They know they need to adjust, which is why they've made moves to bring games to PC and mobile, and they've opened up their subscription service. They know they need to adjust. They just have such a dominant role right now in the gaming market that they can take their time. But this deal, if it goes through, is going to accelerate the need for them to adjust. I just don't know if they are ready yet to do that. So that was his press conference. And again, the number one thing here is Call of Duty. That's the number one thing that people are arguing about. And this press conference was after he went in and Microsoft went in and sat at the boardroom and presented their case to the European Commission. As we have this here, this is from Microsoft. It says, FYI, Microsoft and ABK have briefed the European Commission for 45 minutes on potential remedies to ease competition concerns, then followed by a 15-minute Q&A session. Sony has stressed that the licensing deals won't ease competition concerns. And this is from IDAS again, update from MLEX, posted by IDAS, and says, Microsoft and ABK have briefed the European Commission on potential remedies to ease competition concerns, and then the 15-minute Q&A. Sony has cemented its position as the main opponent to the deal and is being granted twice the time to intervene on the hearing than other third parties are, which is crazy. They're definitely getting preferential treatment there in intervening twice the time as the other third parties, and I guess because most of the other third parties have agreed to it at this point. Sony had 30 minutes reserved for its participation, whereas Nvidia, Google, Valve, EA, and the European Games Developer Federation each had, that says 15 minutes. It's just the arrow there is blocking it, but double the time, 15 minutes. This morning, the commission has heard, you know what, I'll just double check that. Yeah, so 15 minutes for the other companies in there. Then they go on, this morning, the commission has heard presentations by Phil Spencer and Bobby Kotick explaining the rationale behind the deal. There were also interventions by advisors from Microsoft and ABK about why the deal doesn't pose competition concerns, and then Brad Smith will deliver the final remarks to close the hearing. And then it goes on here and says, just open it up. MLEX understands that although Sony has refuted the idea that the licensing deals will ease competition concerns, it is engaged in talks with the Xbox maker on potential remedies. While Sony has held talks with Microsoft on platform access, it has stressed that licensing deals won't ease competition concerns. It doesn't sound like Sony is very pro agreement. So they're still going all out to make sure this deal doesn't go through. They really sound like they don't want to agree on anything, and they're going to take this to the very end. But after these announcements today by Microsoft agreeing on the deal with Nvidia and agreeing on the deal with Nintendo, on paper, if this deal goes through, they're going to sign it, obviously. They may change their tune. They may go forward and think that these meetings has affected the chances that it will be blocked, and they may sit down at the table and try to hammer out a deal with Xbox. We have Phil Spencer here again doing his Twitter stuff, tweeting out the 10-year agreement with Nvidia and GeForce Now, saying we have signed a 10-year agreement with Nvidia that will allow GeForce Now players to stream Xbox PC games as well as Activision Blizzard PC titles, including COD. Following the acquisition, we're committed to bringing more games to more people however they choose to play. I think like it's going to be huge, the Activision Blizzard games going on to PC. That's just going to be massive for Nvidia GeForce Now, and more people are going to subscribe just to play those titles, especially on the PC platform. So it's been a crazy day of stuff. I'm just seeing if there's anything else here I want to check on and go over before I end this video. I think there was a breakdown that was a pretty good. Oh, there's this here too. The European economic market share as of 2022. Microsoft printed out this big poster to really highlight the dominance of PlayStation. 80% Sony, PlayStation 20%, Xbox. They left Nintendo out of there, which is kind of funny. And then we have a update here, a breakdown of everything that has actually occurred from post-up, or actually this spokesperson from Activision Blizzard has released a statement about today's proceedings, and they say this is actually pretty interesting. Microsoft is doing exactly what they said they do. Sony continues to deny the opportunity for a long-term agreement and is undermining the deal to protect its 2-decade dominance in video games. We are confident regulators will find that our proposed merger will enhance competition and create greater opportunities for workers and better games for our players. So lots of stuff here. And again, at the end of the day, it is essentially just Xbox versus PlayStation, but now it's Nvidia and Nintendo on Xbox's side, plus all the unions on Xbox's side, and they're all clashing, and Sony is the only one there with the main concerns to try to stop this deal. And the regulators, are they going to listen to Sony? Are they going to take their concerns and look deeply into them and then see, hey, Sony is correct here, this is going to really hurt competition? Or are they going to look at all the other evidence and see that Xbox is trying to bring these games to as many people as possible? This won't hurt competition. In fact, this will democratize gaming more and get more people to actually play and enjoy these games on the devices that they want to play on. But we'll wait and see. I'm sure more stuff is going to come out about this, so make sure to stay tuned to the channel, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. Almost at 10K, it'd be really cool to get there. And I appreciate all your support, guys. And I will catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.